Ja, die was fáilte go dtí an chlár den ná in nachtas mise Ivan O'Murla agus Tommy an Seo inniu go dtí a hocht clog. Yeah, you're welcome to Terrace Talk. It's Ivan Hurley with you as ever until 8 o'clock this evening, and we've got an action-packed show of Gaelic Games action from the weekend. Of course, there's so much to digest and look back on and to preview tonight as well, because it all comes thick and fast. Well, the Kingdom into the Allianz Football League Division 1 decider, draw with Armagh enough in the end, 121 to Kerry's 24 points. That's got the men into the Division 1 final. Our ladies unfortunately beaten away to Armagh 113 to 28 in the end. A 2-point defeat for the Kingdom leaves them in some relegation trouble ahead of next weekend. Of course, they're in action against Kildare on Sunday, and a big one if they're to retain their Division 1 status. Our hurlers, they're up into Division 1. They beat Meath 218 to 18 points to book their spot in the Division 2 final next Saturday, and of course into Division 1B up against the likes of Waterford, Wexford, Offaly next year. Fantastic achievement by Tweak and there's players there as well, so we'll be chatting hurling a little later on. And of course our Camogie girls as well, who have booked a place in the Camogie Division 2 final as well. So really positive weekend all round for the Kingdom. As ever, you can get in touch with the programme with your thoughts or views, anything catch your eye that we might have missed over the weekend. You're more than welcome to get in touch with your opinions or views. 083 300 3300. You can text or WhatsApp us on that, or you can call 066 7123 666. Niamh is taking your calls, and you can email if you're further afield or maybe want to get in touch during the week. It's terracetalk@radiokerry.ie. But as we said at the outset, it's men's football to start this evening, and the Kingdom safely into the Division 1 final. A draw enough in the end for Kerry to get into the league final. Of course, Armagh surviving with the draw as well. We might have had a less dramatic couple of minutes if we had a few earpieces in a few of the Armagh players' ears, but dramatic nonetheless. Liam Brosnan, John Kennedy, you're welcome. Liam, it's a job done into a final that Jack O'Connor said in his interview after it wasn't a priority, but we're there now and we're looking forward to next weekend again.
It's like deja vu all over from last year, Ivan, really. Yeah. And we said it here last week, John. We said a draw, if we could arrange it, it might be so
not saying anything now.
Not saying anything, we didn't arrange it, no, but to be fair, look, it was a fantastic game of football. No quarter given by any team, and it was played at championship pace then as well. Now, in attendance of about 12,000 people up there. It's a lovely stadium, something like Austinstack Park. The crowd are on top of you, great atmosphere, and talk about a first 20 minutes of exhibition football by Kerry. I think it was, I read somewhere today, was it 7 minutes before an Armagh player actually kicked a ball, bar the goalkeeper. 7 minutes. Kerry just dominated completely. And then for the last 15 minutes, it was like the whole thing swung, and Armagh started getting back into it, and the 2 pointers that have really improved our game and it has made it so exciting. It was Conor Turbis and these guys, when they started kicking the ball and getting on ball, they were causing trouble, and it was just up and down the field. You couldn't keep your eyes off it.
Yeah, it was an enjoyable encounter, John, wasn't it? I think you look at kind of the last game of the league, can often be dead rubbers, or maybe one team is well in the final and someone has nothing to play for, but both teams kind of had something to play for yesterday, and as Liam said, played at a good championship pace.
Yeah, played at a good championship pace, and I suppose, look, there was rumours during the week that David Clifford wasn't going to travel and that type of thing, but
I'm glad he did.
Yeah, exactly, he did is right. But look, Jack, with the team he had out, that there was no shadow boxing here. They needed a point to be certain, maybe 2 points depending on, but Armagh were fighting for their lives in Division 1, and what an exhibition, like Liam said, for the first 20 minutes, but then give credit to Armagh for the way they came back. But the quality of football by both sides, the intensity, the hitting, the tackling, the scores that we got by both sides were just top drawer stuff. And if this is anything, an indication of what's to come in the championship, it's going to be some championship, Ivan. And I suppose it was at the final whistle. Kerry were in a league final. There was a kind of a downcast in the athletic grounds because Armagh were relegated. but all of a sudden the crowd reacted to the results from Salt Hill and the news that came through, and then what a result it was. That point, it was 5 minutes previously the point was no good, but 5 minutes later it was it kept him in Division 1 and the saving point. But a fantastic game. Both sides went at it. And I think that a lot to be learned. Jack would have learned a lot more than he did from the Mayo game in an emphatic victory the previous week. This was real championship stuff.
Liam, Jack said it after as well, and it was kind of an interesting one. He was happy for Armagh to stay up. They deserve it, to be fair, with their performances in the league compared to Monaghan and Dublin, of course, who went down. Okay, they had 2 wins and a draw, and they, to be fair to them, they look kind of the better of the 3 that could potentially have gone down. And Jack, he kind of said it after, it was kind of he was happy for the home crowd, happy for Armagh to stay up in Division 1. Is that more him looking at competitive games for next year, or was it just kind of maybe recognising how strong that Armagh team is?
No, I think look, they were the 2 in the last 2 years. They were the 2 All-Ireland champions. So and the way Armagh had been playing in the league games leading up to it, even though they weren't winning them, they were playing well. We spotted John a couple of times. We watched it on TV. They were putting up high scores. They were playing like they were doing yesterday. And if you look back at them, and I think McGean, he said it in his interview after the match, all their games were exciting. Even though he'd like them to be less exciting, but they play that kind of an up-tempo match. And no, I don't think Jack was patronising or anything like that. I think he really kind of knows that this Armagh team are going to be an obstacle coming forward the summer. Because there's a lot of good footballers, and after 20 minutes when you can bring on the likes of Connacht Turbot or Sheen O'Neill and these guys off the bench. McCambridge is back on it as well on the sub bench. All these guys, when they started coming on, you could see Armagh were kind of starting to grow in confidence, and they're gone nowhere, and it's nice to see them in there, because look, we'll have them down in hopefully Tralee next year. Yeah,
good competitive Division 1 next year. We'll talk about the lads who've come up as well. We will miss the Dublin game though in Tralee. That's always one that brings out a huge sellout crowd. That won't be happening in Ostack Park next year. Back to yesterday, John. Look, a long spin to Armagh, not sure that they stayed the night before or whatever else, but to race into a 10-point lead on such a distance away from home, I never remember it happening ever before. A huge start by Kerry, and a real kind of marker of an intent from early on, I suppose.
Yeah, huge start, and they were led by their leaders. Joe O'Connor was outstanding in that period of time. David was moving out around and kicking scores. Dylan Gainey couldn't miss. He kicked four great scores, and Shawnee Shea was foraging back deep. Our defence were on top. We won 10 out of 11 kickouts. It was just copybook football, really. Hit the ground running. Armagh couldn't get their hands on the ball. We said it off the air. I think there was 7-minute period before they actually got the ball.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff by Kerry. And the scores they got, the movement, the pace of it, and you couldn't keep that up. But what a start they got. But it was great to see Armagh coming back at them, because they asked questions of Kerry. And it was tit for tat right through, but that opening period was reminiscent of last year's All-Ireland's quarter final. When Shawnee Shea, it was the Shawnee Shea show, but yesterday it was our leaders stood up. They took the game to Armagh. Their running, their movement. But one thing you'd have to say is, when we were on top, we kind of went into a lull, and we didn't break the tackle, or we didn't go forward. We were going over and back the field, and we got caught in possession once or twice. We got turned over, and we allowed Armagh back into it. And that's maybe something that Jack and the management team will look at when we attack, and when we give first time ball into those forwards. And we'd have to mention Tom Sullivan also. 5 second half points. Incredible show by Tom again.
Incredible, yeah. And this something we kind of come to expect now from him, to be fair, now that he's back in kind of full time. Liam, I suppose, as John mentioned there, kind of letting Armagh back into it, but it felt like Kerry couldn't breathe for a good kind of 10-minute period in the end of the first half. I think it was the 21st minute Armagh got their first score of the game, and they just came like buses. Then after that, they were flying in. It was kind of this one half. You could have split half. If you split the first half in half, you'd say Kerry versus Armagh was kind of done over that, because Armagh got right back into it towards half time. Yeah,
it was the first half with a game of two halves.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but a lot of it came down to the kick out. In the first 15-20 minutes, we just cleaned them out completely on their kick out and the breaking ball. But I agree with John, that little lull that we seem to go through, it happens in a lot of our games. It happened against Roscommon. We were up 7 points. We kind of went into this mode of passing sideways and going backwards and slowing it down. I know you got to take breaks and you got to kind of try to recover. You can't go to 100 miles an hour for the whole game, but we've got to kind of manage that period a small bit better, and I suppose the management will be looking at that. You know, when Armagh in, for, you could say, from the 20th minute on, they just really pushed up in our kickouts. They got bodies up, every breaking ball that went their way, and of course, and it seems to be a thing of the new game now, that when teams really put pressure on the kick out, they really go for the juggler, you could say, and it put us under a lot of pressure. I think they kicked, was it 10 points, 8 or 10 points within that period, very close to that period. So that's something that the Kerry management, I think that little lull, that we need to take a break, but not to give away too many scores in that time. I think that's something to look at. Yeah, no, it most definitely is. So the game was rightly in the balance, John, at half time, to be fair, and Armagh, they struck the net about 7 or 8 minutes into the second half and kind of took emphasis. Then it looked like Kerry were kind of clawing their way back into a game. They led 10 points to 0. It was the sort of a strange topsy-turvy start of a one. A draw, to be fair, probably the fairest result given the two performances, but Armagh with a well-taken goal, and Kerry actually without a goal for the first time in a while, as far as I remember as well.
Yeah, it was, and the McGeaney made the switches, like Liam said earlier, Oisin O'Neill and Conor Tubbert coming on. They played a huge part in steadying the ship. They got 1-5 between them.
McMullen was very good.
McMullen was very good. Darren McMullen, the 40, was very good. Ross McQuillan played really, and Cian McConville is a real find for them, but it was a game of, when you had the momentum, you kicked on and scored, but it was you couldn't take your eyes off the game for a minute, because off the ball and on the ball, and you'd have to say it was played in the best sporting terms you could get. Real hard stuff. Like there'll be sore bodies today after that, but both sides gave it, But we'll come back to ourselves, like when Armagh had the momentum, again you went back, Jason Foley, there was a couple of blockdowns in the defence. They drained the energy out of the opposition, and they lift your own team. Joe O'Connor, he looked to be on fire every time he got it. You couldn't stop him, And then Tom, as I said, Tom Sullivan with the 5 second half points. But it was the quality. Go back to it again, the pace of it, and it shows when you're playing for something. People will talk about the league, and that it doesn't matter getting to league final or going down to Division 2. Is really competitive down there. Does it matter? It certainly does. And Armagh didn't want to go down. You can see that. The one thing you would have to say is, in the last play, Liam, and we spoke about it off air, they had the momentum. How Charlie Ogburns didn't kick the ball over the bar with his left leg, I'll never know. And if they had been relegated, they'd be talking about that today, because obviously they were playing the tactical one, wind the clock down and go for the score. But they probably overdid it. But I think a draw was a fair result at the end of the day. Armagh will be happy, and Jack O'Connor's in league final.
John's touching the end of the game nearly, and we may as well kind of dissect it now while we're there, but I suppose there's two elements to it. The Armagh were a point ahead with whatever it was, maybe 2 minutes on the clock, and just completely backed away from Kerry's kick out. Shane Murphy kicked it to Brino Bugdy, I think, worked the way up, and Kerry, as they always do, got a score. I think David Clifford kicked the point that levelled it, and then that gave Armagh the chance to come up, and obviously the missed opportunity at the end. But a strange one to retreat from a kick out with such little time left on the clock.
It was, but I suppose that's gone back to old habits die hard. And that's what Ulster football used to. You'd score, and next day everyone would just run back over the halfway line. So I think that they'll learn from that. But what I liked about those plays, the set plays, especially with Kerry, if you look, is when we wanted to score, look where the ball was, whose hands were the ball on. It was either Shawnee Shea, it was David, and if they were drawing attention, then you would like say Joe, and you would like say Tom Sullivan coming into place. So it's that's something we'll see a lot of going forward, especially coming to say the Hooter at half time. You'll see maybe for the last 30 or 40 seconds there will be space created, there will be moves kind of made, they'll be moving, especially with Donny on the sideline. He's good at that kind of stuff. But yesterday when we needed a score, when there was times there and the clock ticking down, we were down a point, Kerry never panicked.
No.
You could see the ball was coming up the field. Tom Sullivan was organising, Shawnee Shea, David, and they kind of isolated David and Shawnee on the right hand side of the field, and they win, and they did the business.
Yeah, no, 100%. It was a strange one right at the end that someone just didn't get a foot to knock it over the bar for a man, and for kind of the ball then to go wide was kind of just a right sucker punch at the end. But as you said, the result in Salt Hill had secured Armagh's Division 1 status. Again, we've gone 16 minutes without mentioning him, John, but David Clifford ended up being the top scorer yesterday. 10 points, 2 2-pointers. Should have been 3, 1 got touched over. It would have been a class 2-point score. But, as you said, if it isn't Shawnee Shea, it's David Clifford. If it's not David Clifford, it's Tom Sullivan. We're very, very lucky with who we have, but another class performance from David yesterday.
Superb. Look, I mean, you could spend the show talking about David Clifford and Shawnee Shea, to be fair. I thought Shawnee's game yesterday, the work rate he had, the leadership he showed when we were on top and when we were behind was unreal. But David it's just the kicking is an example to any young fella going playing Gaelic football.
And the power, Jonathan.
The power.
Yeah, it's the power.
The free kick out near the sideline.
Yeah.
God bless the linesman. He was at pains to tell him take it back. But he could have put him into the middle of the stand and he'd still kick it over the bar. What a score, like. I mean, it was an incredible kick and from a standing position.
2-pointer that I definitely think it went over the bar.
Yeah.
I think he kicked it so high the umpire couldn't even figure out
that was definitely went over,
that definitely went over the bar, yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and just to mention kind of other scorers that you see, you mentioned Tom Sullivan, John, and of course Dylan Gainey, another impressive game there, 4 points I think from him. It's amazing how kind of you look at it, and we've been on about kind of bloody in new players and everything else throughout the league, but we've got kind of the big mainstays back, especially away to Armagh, a game that they had to win as they thought going into it as well. Just goes to show how our senior leaders, I suppose, are so important to us still. As much as the youth is fantastic coming through, but we still need our big boys as well, don't we?
Yeah, you need your big boys, and any management will pick their regular starters. But Jack knows that the guys that have been playing in different games throughout the league, they're ready to come in when needed. And a player we haven't mentioned yet, Mark O'Shea, he was outstanding yesterday. There was 4 or 5 contenders for man of the match. Mark actually got it, but his quality around the middle of the park, if he's not winning the ball, he's not letting the opposition win it, which is vital. But he has developed even further, and he's taken up from where he left off last year. And himself and Sean O'Brien, great midfield partnership. It allows Joe Connor to attack.
Yeah.
We have a lot of options, but like you said, Jack went back to the tried and trusted yesterday, and apart from Keith Evans, the rest have been there and they've done that. But I think when he looks behind him, the panel he has at the moment with the newer guys that have come in, certainly they're up to it. But look at what's to come back onto the panel again, Liam.
Yeah.
It shows that competition for place is going to be great, and we'll need that.
Again, I feel like that's a topic we comes up every week about the getting the youngsters in and for later on the championship as well. One man back was Brino Bugli. Liam, we hadn't seen him yet, so nice to have another man back, and again kind of Jack being able to drip feed these back towards the latter stage of the league was great to see as well.
Yeah, and I think he was the guy that saved the shot on the line in the second half.
It wasn't great now, but
it was a shot from Turbot, and it was Breen, even though I think they were saying it was Micheál Burns, but it wasn't. It was Breen Begley that was there. So fantastic experience, like John said, adding to her whole squad, your team. It's and we don't want to be sound like a broken record, but we've seen it here with the last couple of weeks. It's great, and if that game yesterday, and if we could go on and hopefully win the National League next week, it's going to be a massive boost to the panel. Because all these guys had a hand to play in it. Keith Evans got a lot of experience now as well yesterday. But a tough game, big physical game, but he did his bit, like Armin Heinrich again yesterday. It's all experience building. I thought defensively we were very solid. Good experience well for Shane Murphy, because come championship you're going to have those high presses. He'll probably have it next week against Donegal as well, so you'll be learning for your kick out. I think that game yesterday was better than a month's training, or any challenge managed matches.
Yeah, no, 100%. We'd have to try find out how many players Kerry use. I say Croke Park be printing maybe the double the amount of medals should Kerry win it as well, which is great. And again, it's great to have used a full panel throughout the league and get everyone with different runs. We have to take a break, lads. 083 300 3300. Plenty of your comments to get to in the next section of the programme as well. You can text or WhatsApp that number. You can call 066 7123 666, or you can email terracetalk@radiokerry.ie. Yeah, you're very welcome back to Terrace Talk. Plenty of messages coming our way this evening, so we try to get to as many as we can. Ivan, great result for Kerry in the end yesterday, but what concerns us is it's the second league game that Kerry have lost 10-point leads. Some of the tackles were well outside the rules yesterday, but fair play to the Kerry players who stood up to it. Do John or Liam know the date for Kerry's semi-final against Clare in Ennis? That's from Michael Brosnan in Skibbereen. The semi-final is the weekend before the Maybank holiday, as far as I'm aware. So that should be the 25th or 26th, depending if it's a Saturday or Sunday.
The Munster final is 2 weeks after that.
2 weeks after that. Potential Munster final. 2 weeks after that. Some of the tackles were well outside the rules yesterday, but fair play to Kerry players. Yeah, it was, as John, you said, John, it was kind of a tough hitting game. There'll be a few sore bodies, but again, at this stage of the league, barring obviously a serious injury in touch wood, thank God everyone came through that. It probably is a good kind of test of the S&C and the strength and conditioning, everything else. I know David got a bit of a whack into the fence, which is obviously never nice to see. Now I think it was just kind of a shoulder to shoulder, and just the fence seemed a bit close behind the goal, but other than that, it was hard hitting, but probably a good thing to see at this stage of the year.
Yeah, it is. It showed the intensity, and I said it previously. Look, you have a lot of big men, a lot of fit, strong men out there, and there was hard hitting. Jason Foley got a few hefty belts there, and but came up. The boys. It was played in very good spirit. You'd have to say that. There was a few tackles maybe that you could say were questionable, but I thought Cawley, the ref, he was in control. It didn't boil over or anything like that. But I suppose the attitude of both teams was to go at it, and when you're playing at that intensity and you have clashes, you will have hard hits there, and that's part of the game.
Yeah, you kind of expect to go up to teams, in Ulster. They're always hard hitting games, and it's always a very, very tough place to go, a long way from home. Huge credit to the large Kerry support there yesterday, and even on the television was incredible to see, and fair play to everyone who travelled up. That text as well from Michael Brosnan in Skibbereen. Thanks for tuning our way this evening, Michael. Another one here. What a brilliant day yesterday. I know we lost a big lead. We fought like men who refused to die till the final whistle. It's been a brilliant year, but we can call out Mark O'Shea if there was ever an example to a young lad to never give up, keep trying, keep improving, and then improving. Then Mark is it. He was fantastic yesterday, and that's from Neil Ferreter, who's tuned our way from County Meath this evening from Dunarose. So thanks very much to Neil. Look, you mentioned Mark O'Shea already, Liam, and it probably does. I think we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago as well, that kind of coming back from kind of being in the depths really of probably the outside the 26 and maybe outside the 30, and kind of proving your way through maybe with the Crokes or whatever else it was, and getting yourself back in, and then getting that caught up last year when probably you were not in the 26 even, to go into play midfield and go on and play there in the All-Ireland, and then prove yourself in the league this year as well. Exactly,
and I agree fully with our listener there. Like the Mark O'Shea, as I said, the Mark O'Shea story, it's a story for any youngster, because like you said, Ivan, he's about 4 years hanging around the Kerry kind of trainings and coming in and out. And I did hear that if he was called on a Tuesday night to go in and play a match, or a Thursday night, he'd go in. A lot of other players wouldn't go in because they knew they weren't going to be considered for games down along the line. Mark went away, he kept his head down, he did his S&C, and you can see with him now, the body, he's a big, strong unit of a man
for midfield now, isn't he?
And definitely he's, if you look back for years, we always had a kind of a number one midfielder, with Diarmuid O'Connor probably for years. Mark is getting very close to that now. He's and he's only a year into it. Which is unreal. But he's strong. He's the football is there and the breathing, the O'Shea breathing. It's sure they're bound to have it between the football and the basketball. He's a very good basketballer as well. No, so but he kept his head down. He battled away with Crokes. When he came in to Kerry, when he was called in, he went in and he came out and in and out and in and out, and then he got his chance last year and he took it with two hands. I'm delighted for him because he is definitely a role model for any youngster out there.
I think Ivan, you said it, he's an example to young fellas, because unfortunately, not so much with Kerry, but in a lot of teams you hear this guy, he pulled away or he left or he didn't commit. Like, this is the mental toughness you need. It comes from the family, like Liam said, steeped in the GA and the basketball. Great attitude, waited for his chance. And he had an interview on the television last night. I was watching after the game. Like, humble, down to earth guy.
Easy going,
That's easy going. No big deal. Another game coming up against Donegal. Was it Donegal? He said. So that'll tell you. But what a story. And for any young fellow out there that's trying to get on a team or get on a panel, doesn't get on there, doesn't make it, keep at it.
Keep at it, yeah.
The thing with Martin as well, like, it's great because you've like the Joe O'Connor with you, you've like the David, Shawnee. It's a great team to be in at the moment because you have leaders around you. So when you're a young fella coming in, it's not as if we're thrown in at the deep end. No, he's a lot of experienced players around him.
And we said it before, you need a bit of luck. We were up in Tullamore last year.
That's right,
when Meath beat us. You could pick in one hand the guys that played well. Mark wasn't started
against Cavan.
And Joe got injured after about 3 minutes.
Dermot shoulder,
Dermot got injured. In came Mark.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, exactly. And he's, you mentioned basketball, he's a great snooker player as well, would you believe that?
I heard, he's a
great snooker player.
Brian Kelly.
And himself and Brian play together, They're, one of them, I don't know, they're both as good as each other, I think.
And Crokes, there
we go, a bit of rivalry inside the snooker club in Killarney,
And I think actually we might say congratulate him because I think there was a baby there, I think, during the week as well.
Oh, congratulations. No, absolutely. There's always a good fight in the snooker table, I'll tell you that. They might be there a good friendship, but they're both good snooker players.
Even on that, as we're congratulating people, I met a guy today, Joe Langan, the former referee from Tarbert. He's a big birthday tomorrow. I think he's 80. From all the GA Gaels around the county and in North Kerry in particular. You know, Joe was a man that refereed many games for me when I was playing. Always common sense. What he has done for the GA and the county.
Never give out to him, John.
Never give out to him.
Always a good word to say about him.
You would respect Joe and wish him a happy birthday and many years of health and happiness ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, John. It's always great to see people recognise, especially for the great work they do as well. Still plenty of your messages here, loads here to come to. Hi to all. It's in the Kerry's boys' hands now to win the league and not let it behind like they almost did with Armagh yesterday when they were 10 points up. They got sloppy and the boys conceded a goal, brought Armagh back into it. The other boys that's training should be brought back into it. If for the final now, Paul Ganey, Gavin White and Diarmuid O'Connor, who are back in training with them, there's no point in having them wrapped up in cotton wool. That's from Eilish in Tralee. That actually is an interesting enough one. Obviously we don't be peeking over the wall in Kearns or in Clarny or wherever, but interesting to see where the lads are getting back into it, and will they kind of come straight back in for a league final, or does Jack kind of stick with the tried and tested now that he's had throughout the league to this stage?
Ivan, he'll stick with the tried and tested. I don't think you'll see the likes of Paddy or Diarmuid or Gavin next weekend. It's probably too close. If there were going to be a chance for a league final, he probably would have taken them for the squad this weekend, but that didn't happen. So I think what you saw the weekend, there won't be many changes to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right there, Liam. And then the other lads will have, was it 3 week kind of
3 weeks plus they have the training camp as well, so it'll be, but that's why I'm saying, like, this game next week, even though it's a league final against Donegal, two of the best teams in the country, but it's a blank canvas then again after that.
Yeah,
because Donegal are going away in a warm weather training session or training week as well, so there'll be, I think you'll see both two teams really going at it next week.
Yeah,
and whoever will win will come away with the joys, but whoever lost will go away, and their warm weather camp might be just that little bit edgier.
Yeah, before they head to Quinty de Lago.
Exactly.
Lovely spot over there, Liam. Absolutely beautiful spot down there in the Algar played golf there last year. Funny enough, actually walked out and
golf,
I went out there and the the Kerry kit van was parked in the car park at the hotel. One thing you don't imagine to see. But they're heading to out to Portugal. Actually, John, just while we're on the topic of the warm weather camps, it's funny enough, I actually read a good piece about them and kind of why there was so many counties doing them, and it's not actually to go out and train for kind of playing in what might be the heat in the summer. It's actually this is what they tell us anyway, that it's for if they want to stop, let's say when they're training maybe 15 and 15 and someone wants to go in and kind of give instruction, the players aren't getting cold while they're standing around it. It's a moderate temperature that if they're going to do their tactic thing, they can stand there in their shorts and t-shirt and not get cold like you might do here at home.
Absolutely, Ivan, and you have every guy in the one camp for that few days, and you can do tactical work, you can do your talks, you can do your training on the field, and as you say, if mistakes are made, you can stop it. I was involved with Clare senior footballers. We went to the Catskills one year for 5 days, 6 days, and it was incredible what you can do with guys. 3 sessions a day, and you're doing 1-on-1, and you're mingling with fellas. It's good for team bonding, not so much from the Kerry point of view because they're together for a number of years, but for teams that are coming together, there's no better thing to do than to go away. Everyone's together, there's no distraction, and you can concentrate on the work, and invariably teams come back with a pep in the step from it because it's a break before the championship.
Yeah, I think even team bonding, John, you're saying maybe not for Kerry, but there's so many kind of new faces in around as well. Yeah. I'm sure it'll help them kind of get into that group as well. The first 10 minutes from Kerry was probably the best football I've seen from us in terms of pace and efficiency over the last 15 years. We have an extra gear that is devastating, and no team will live with us if we keep this up for the championship. That's from Pam in Blennerville. I like the positive text after.
Oh yeah, that's good. But I wouldn't go as far as the last 10 or 15 years. I think our display against Armagh last year as well there for the 15 minutes there as well, but would be very close to that the weekend as well. But she's dead right. If we can play at that pace and play with that directness, there a lot of teams will find it very hard to live with us.
And it certainly silenced the Armagh crowd. Like
McGeaney was scratching his head.
The athletic grounds is a cauldron, and you know that when they're in there and a big game, but Kerry certainly silenced them.
Because you could see when he took off Charlie O'Burns, it was a kind of I don't know, was it a kind of a mad rush of blood to the head, because Charlie O came off and he wasn't one bit happy either, and next thing he was brought on then again through the match. It
was great to get on top. When Kerry are playing like that, it's so enjoyable to watch, because obviously from a Kerry perspective, I think even a neutral kind of football fan will just sit back and watch a Kerry team in full flow like that and just wishes it goes on for the whole game, because it's just so easy to watch, John, isn't it?
It's brilliant, Ivan, and it's I suppose the football yesterday, all the games, the quality at the different levels, but this was quality stuff. Two teams going at it, and you had the extra little bit of McGeaney and Donaghy being involved with them, and but the respect that was shown to both. There was nothing on the sideline. It was football, and another positive for Armagh is we hear, Liam, that Rian O'Neill is back training. Isn't it great to see him back training again? Another top quality player, and that adds more spice to the championship.
As much as you hope to beat them in the championship, you always want to see the best players playing as well, don't you? It really is that.
And our new rules have exploded football completely.
Absolutely. The one thing actually on that, yesterday around about neutrals kind of watching games, I get from the fact that they don't want dead rubbers and to start all the games at the same time, because if you have a game on later on, it'll mean nothing. We probably wouldn't have seen the sort of drama with Dublin and Galway if the Kerry Armagh game was on before, whatever else. But there was something yesterday, and in fairness, I give them massive credit to TG Cahir. All weekend were unbelievable with the way they were chopping and changing between games yesterday. So I know I was focused on the Kerry game, but from watching online and everything else, but they're nearly, it feels like it's nearly missing out, because we only get to see kind of one live game every weekend. We get to see maybe a deferred game as well, which is very handy. But when all the games are on at the same time, it's hard to kind of get a good overall view of everything and what happened. And it was such a dramatic afternoon as well, Liam.
It was a nice boss. Look, always the last game of the season, even whether it's the Premiership, they're all played off. They all kick off at the same time. For those reasons. But I suppose with the way it was going yesterday, it was kind of I was watching the Sunday game last night, and they kind of made a good point that you could bring Division 2 and 4 on Saturday and 1 and 3 on Sunday, that kind of way. So you'd have less games, because we were all looking through our phones to see what the results were in other divisions as well. And I suppose, look, it's always a mad weekend, the last game of the season anyway.
And it seemed mad, John, that they had the hurling and the football
Same weekend.
on the same weekend.
Yeah.
This sort of what would you call it, kind of the palaver of kind of this dramatic last. Now I know the hurling wasn't as dramatic as the football across the divisions, but having it all in the same weekend, it was just kind of a total overconsumption of Gaelic games this weekend with everything else going on. No, we can't complain, but it's nearly a pity they kind of didn't maybe avoid them out a small bit.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ivan. I think they could have football on one weekend. Agree with Liam. Have two divisions on Saturday, the other two on Sunday. It would give you that chance to see the games, because there were so many, in every division there was huge games. Yep. And promotion and relegation were at stake, so it's we were spoiled for choice, and even on Saturday night with the hurling, great games as well, and Kerry then getting promotion. Like it was a huge weekend for the GA, really.
Yeah, no, it was, and I think a good win as well for the GA so early in the year, March 23rd. Hi lads, great day in the athletic grounds yesterday. Very much glad I travelled up. We were in the opposite terrace from the stand on the halfway line. David's second half 2-pointer was 100% to score, and one of our owners was convinced that it was over. Even the Armagh crowd, would you believe it? It was so high up that the umpire could not see the ball. That's from above our listener. Fair play for travelling up as well. That must be said as well. And look, I think in the grand scheme of things, we could be complaining about that today if we were beaten and not in a league final. But it was sky high. Liam, you umpire a bit now. In fairness, you've got to be squinting your eyes to see it.
Yeah, as an umpire, you don't want balls coming down like that. and Donegal were renowned for it when I used to be umpiring at that level. No, you'll be 21 yards out and they kick it maybe 80 yards into the air. No need for it, that kind of way. But I agree that looked like as if it was over the bar yesterday. Yeah. And to be fair, David didn't make a whole thing about it, a whole pile about it.
Usually does.
But at the same time, he was kind of making his point. He was kind of baffled at why he wasn't put up.
Yeah.
He looked as if Jesus, that was well over. Why didn't he put it up?
Yeah. I remember he battled. Was it against Monaghan and Clarny when Kerry were well up, and he was explaining his lines on how he was definitely outside the arc. Dan was in touch on the phone from New York. Hope you're keeping well, Dan. I used to have a chat with Dan when I was producing this programme for the last couple of years inside in Studio 1, and we used to be chatting for it until I realised I had to go back to work. So Dan, pleasure to see you. You're back in touch. He said hats off to all the Kerry teams the weekend, the men's football, hurling, ladies football and our camogie girls as well. He's wondering where Shane Ryan is. We any closer to getting the inside scoop? I know even for a bit of surgery and stuff, there seems to be no kind of mention of him coming back.
Mention of him, mate. I don't even know if he's back training or anything, Ivan, to be fair. No, that's what the injury he had was kind of going to be a slow burner.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see.
Time will tell, absolutely. Lads, we have to take a quick break. We'll be back with plenty more on the leagues, ladies football, previewing of course the league final, and we'll be chatting a small bit about Michael Lester, of course, who sadly passed away yesterday as well. Plenty more to come on Terrace Talk. 083 300 3300, or you can call 066 7123 666. Now you're welcome back to the programme. Still loads of your messages coming in. Afternoon all. Initially I was apprehensive to allow Donegal Road test a new system against us. However, they will test against a team minus players in pivotal game defining positions like Paddy, Gavin White and Shane Ryan, not to mention Diarmuid and Paul. I think next Sunday is invaluable for our newcomers as will allowing them to experience the big match day itinerary, especially in Croke Park. This is as important as the game itself. Jack must be delighted. League final secured, but cards still close to the chest, while enhancing certain players like Heinrich and the formidable midfield duo. Mark man of the match again, and Sean's crossbar catch was Dara-esque. Tom in North Kerry. That is a good one actually, John. And one we did mention a while back, and now the fact that we're there, the chance of going to kind of Croke Park on a big occasion with silverware will only bring on the youngsters.
Yeah, I agree with your listener there. You can't go there often enough, Ivan. The getting into that rhythm and the familiarity of the place, but playing high intensity games there. This is the real test against Donegal, and it's a great finale to the league. And I'd have to agree with him. That catch by Sean O'Brien was absolutely outstanding. As he said, it was like It was
Terrace, yeah. Ivan Kerry, again captained by Shawnee O'Shea, while Thomas Sullivan and Dylan Gainey were on the team. Surely one of the Dingle lads as county champions should be given this honour. I think we had this, was it last week or the week before as well? Vice captaincy selected by management team. Captain suggested by the club. Yeah, I do get it though. I get where you're kind of coming from with, if there's a Dingle player on the pitch, they should be the captain, but I think that's the rules from management. Congratulations to Brendan Griffin, who is refereeing Division 2 final on Sunday.
Well done, Brendan.
Yeah, well done to Brendan. Always great to see Kerry involvement.
That'll be a lively one as well.
That will be a lively one, yeah. It's actually a good double header on Sunday for, I think, Kerry fans to get both games really, because you're going to have Cork and Meath next year in the league. We've played Meath last year, we saw what happened there, and Cork potential opponents in a Munster final as well. So a good double header in fairness from the GA for Kerry supporters as well.
Yeah, and you would have a bit of an interest in it as well, because like you said, for all the reasons that you have said, and like Cork are moving well. I don't know, you like seeing them. I see O'Callaghan there, number 8, he played very well the weekend from Sherlock is Fahy now is a new guy that's popping up as well, all these guys. So Cork will be delighted with their run, and what this will do as well, it'll get the Cork supporters behind them, because they're starting to pop the head above the pulpit now again, and so the crowd will be coming. So Killarney hopefully for a Munster final, we have to get there first.
Yeah, and Cork as well.
Yeah, there should be a big crowd in Killarney.
And that was a great victory up in Tyrone. Tyrone might be going well now, but you go up to Armagh to play Tyrone, it's always tough. That was a big win.
We came away from Tyrone last year with a win, and it made our season.
Yeah.
Every time, like John said, every time you take something out of Tyrone. Yeah,
they didn't bring Tyrone didn't bring Cork out to the back sticks.
Pomeroy.
We're looking across from behind the goal, trying to commentate on it. We get back to the other league games in just a second. The Kerry Association in Dublin hit the road in force by a bus yesterday. A great trip, great football, and top class supporters from Armagh. The biggest roar was the news that Galway had beaten Dublin. Plenty you learned, and fair play to the Kerry team. That's from Anita Kelly, and the Dublin branch of Kerry supporters are always strong as well. Great to see, John. There was such a good click between the Armagh and Kerry supporters. Look, we've known in the past they're tough places to go, but Joe, nice to see. I think again, respecting kind of each other and respecting the football. The Armagh, majority of their supporters, and I know there's always a couple on every side of it, but nice to see that kind of a good click in the stands yesterday as well, and Kerry were made feel very welcome.
Yeah, definitely, Ivan, and there's a great respect there, and tough place to go, real cauldron, but respect. I think that's what it's all about. Fellas taking frees and no jeering or booing or anything like that. That's something that's coming into the game and not nice. Whatever, and every county there's a few that you can pick out incidents in the crowd. We've all been in there, but generally, yesterday you couldn't. It was 10 out of 10 for everything. Huge Kerry crowd up there. Armagh, it's after such a game, it's usually the finish that both teams are happy. Rarely you get that, but what an occasion, and great to see the supporters clubs going up in the buses, and it all adds to the whole atmosphere, and great day had out by all, and the result was fitting for both teams.
Yeah, and the weather getting better as well as the league went on as well, which I think was appreciated by most up there yesterday. Right, so Liam, Division 1, of course, we knew Monaghan were exiled. Not good things coming out of Monaghan at all really, and it looks like they're going to be struggling next year as well. They finished bottom, 7 defeats from 7. Dublin 2 wins, not enough to save them. We've seen Dublin Division 2 in recent years as well, and it hasn't really affected them. They won the All-Ireland from Division 2 as well.
Yeah. But I don't think they'll win an All-Ireland from this Division 2 though.
Oh, still a big team to go down though, a big name, isn't it?
Oh yeah. But we spoke here a couple of weeks ago. I think it's just that when they were going so well and when they were winning All-Irelands, they probably took the eye off the underage bracket, and they're struggling for it now. That's I think we won't see Dublin come for a couple of years, because they just don't seem to have the young fellas, the calibre of young fellas that they had when Dublin were winning All-Irelands. They're not there.
You can clip that one there, Niamh, and when Dublin go on to win the All-Ireland this year, we'll have that from Liam Brosnan for the Christmas party.
John, back you up.
But I think if we look at Division 1, Ivan, the two teams that were relegated, their performances throughout the campaign
didn't
justify staying in Division 1.
Yeah.
the same we'll say for the two teams that are in the final. They were the two best teams there.
Yeah. Surprise package of the year, Roscommon, Division 1.
They
Maybe
were,
not even a surprise, but the best performances.
They
really.
were, I suppose, yeah. You could now say the surprise packages, because at the start of the league we would have said they were probably they'd be one of your two to go down. And when we saw them inside Killarney in the first round, we were impressed with them. And we said maybe it was just the Kerry factor that they rose them out. They kicked on from that, and they're just playing nice attacking football. Yesterday I think he changed the team a lot, so he was probably looking down at things further down along the line. But they were very impressive now, the way they played. He had them going well.
Yeah, absolutely. Division 2 then, so our neighbours Cork promoted to Division 1 for the first time in a lot of years. I'm not going to say what did I read 13? I could be wrong in that. Is a long time away from Division 1. And Meath, of course, back up as well. Louth and Derry missing out there. Tyrone with just 5 points, 2 wins and a draw. They could be in a small bit of trouble going to the championship. Offaly, no wins, 7 defeats. And Kildare relegated to Division 3.
Yeah.
Kildare were always a team that were kind of there and thereabouts. Leinster Championship. Their hurlers are playing at a much higher level than their footballers now, which is quite strange. But good competitive Division 2. I know we're kind of looking at Kerry John a lot through Division 1, so we haven't been paying a huge close attention to it, but obviously Cork going very, very well. Meath and probably Tyrone, the surprise package, struggling in Division 2. Yeah,
big time. I suppose looking at Cork, they recovered well from the Derry hammering, we'll call it, up there. They went in their warm weather, they came back and beat Kildare, and they went up and beat Tyrone. Deserved to go up. Meath the same. But I think the team of this division this year has been Louth. Even though they didn't get promotion, the exhibition by Samuel Roy yesterday was just top draw. He was, David Clifford at bracket, being honest with you. The score he kicked with the outside of his right foot from outside the arc, in the second half, it was just class. This is a team that won the Leinster Championship.
And I think that's why they'd be disappointed.
Yes,
they didn't go up.
They'd be disappointed. Ger Brennan leaving. These were all little dents, but they have recovered well, and they have brought in quite a number of the young lads from the under-20s. A good squad there now, and they look forward to the Leinster Championship.
No, absolutely. A very Ulster-looking Division 2 next year, and a very Leinster-looking Division 3. We were kind of talking about the possibilities of Division 2 with Ulster. Now we know that Monaghan will be there. We know that Derry will be there. Tyrone will be there. Cavan will be there. And Down will be there, so a huge Ulster interest in Division 2.
And if Armagh came down, it would have been 6.
Yeah, it was very close. It was Armagh, of course. Division 3, lads. I know we don't pay a huge amount of, we kind of we're so much about Kerry here, but always interested to see how our Munster teams get on. Of course, Limerick relegated, Clare barely hanging on by just a single point. But I think the standout one is Wexford. John, Division 4 to Division 3 last year, and now Division 3 to Division 2. A last minute goal to sink Westmeath yesterday into a league final. And again, going up to Division 2, we now know how important that is for even playing Sam Maguire and stuff. And a team like Wexford were always, since the Salton Cup have come in, we're looking at them in that side of it. Something going right in Wexford, but a magic moment yesterday on the Hooter to win it.
Magic moment, Ivan, and that was the beauty of the National League this year. And Westmeath, they had one leg in Division 2, and in the Division 3 final, kick out for Wexford. An example how to process it, to play control football. And I suppose the ball into the full forward line was quality. Maybe an element of luck with the way the ball ricocheted across the goals and put away, but the scenes after said it all. That picture painted, what a story, and absolutely brilliant. From a Munster point of view, Limerick relegated to Division 4, disappointing for Jimmy Lee. Having a good run in the Talton last year. Clare just staying up, which was important, but not good for Munster football, being honest. Outside of Kerry and Cork, the other 4 have gone back a little bit.
Yeah, and that's where Division 4 brings us, Liam, as well. Tipperary finishing 5th in the end. Again, it could have been a league final, could have been not. There were so many teams in Division 4. Waterford finishing bottom, 7 defeats from 7. Doesn't bode well for Munster, barring obviously Kerry and Cork in our Division 1. And Carlow coming out of Division 4 for the first time in a long time as well, alongside Longford. So as we kind of said off air, a lot of these, Wicklow just missing out actually. I always give a mention to Wicklow as well, which just Kerry kind of history there. But not boding well for Munster Championship outside Kerry, Cork, and but again, these divisions were so tightly packed, barring Waterford there, any team on the last day could have got to a league final,
right,
so
yeah.
it was right open.
Yeah, Division 4 was right open. Like we said, only one team, Waterford, that couldn't reach the final. Everybody else could. And I suppose that's the beautiful thing about the leagues this year, John. You know, and I suppose we look at our own county leagues down here as well. Now, you find your division. And you're competitive in that division then. I know at times you'll go up and there's times you'll come down. But if you go up, that means you're going well. But if you come down then, you're actually coming down to the division that might suit you. And you can build from there. And I think that's where it's important when teams start coming down, that they do actually build and don't keep slipping. No, and it's and I always said about even harp back about our own county leagues, like if you're Division 3 or Division 4, that's your division and you're competitive in it. There's no point having a Division 4 team playing Division 1 because you're going to be hammered next. All of a sudden fellas have no interest. What really stands out for me, and it always stuck with me, we were going playing a Sigerson Cup match up the north, and we met the Louth goalkeeper above in Dundalk, and he was showing us around their facilities above. We were just having a kick around, and he said like they love the National League because they're playing teams that they can be competitive and being able to beat. Whereas when the Leinster Championship started, he said a lot of their players were going away on holidays.
Because they know they weren't.
Because they knew they weren't. Because at that time Dublin were so strong. They said they didn't want the Leinster. It was just the National League was their year really. And after that, then it was they were all broken up.
Yeah.
You know, so the leagues are important.
It's probably going to be one of the most interesting Leinster Championships, John, in a while. You've got a Dublin team regressing. You have a Meath team flying back up to Division 1. Louth, you said, just missing out. A Wexford team up to Division 2 that kind of surprised everyone.
And Kildare on a given day.
On a given day.
It's a disappointing league for them in Division 2. But again, a tough Division 2. But Leinster's wide open, John, isn't it?
Oh, it's wide open. And look, we said here, I suppose the way things evolve, whatever team is on top, you know, there was talks a number of years ago dividing Dublin in two. There's no talk about that now. Dublin will come back, there's no doubt. Will it take a few years? You know, it probably will. But, you know, if you were Joe Brennan today and the Dublin squad, there's only one way to go. You're going down to Division 2, the hype is gone. You know, they can prepare quietly for the Leinster Championship. They still have a lot of quality players now. Is the appetite there? You know, from some of the older players, bag of medals, does it mean as much to them? We don't know. But like for the likes of Louth and Meath, you know, this is another, for Louth, it's a chance of getting back-to-back Leinster titles.
Leinster titles, yeah.
What an opportunity, like. And they're playing great football.
And the likes of Meath will be really knocking the door. And you know what, Wexford, depending on how the draw goes, whatever comes through,
it could take
wouldn't that be a magic story? Like, you know,
yeah.
even if they got to a Leinster final or something like that, to be huge. But they perform really well in the league as well. Terrace Talk, please, and thanks to a wonderful John and Geraldine King, Martin and Mary Lean, and Donny O'Leary for a brilliant trip to Armagh. Where would we be without them to be able to attend an epic match yesterday? Thanks again to all the Kerry supporters bus, and of course the bus drivers as well. Always important to thank them for getting people up and down the country as well. Setting out the fixtures calendar is a complex task. It is unfortunate there are some County Football League games on Sunday next, as County Football League games are normally 2 weeks apart. Consideration should be given to allowing the National League weekend follow, notwithstanding that Kerry will not be involved every year. Gachra or Kerry, that's Sean De Bruyne as well. And yeah, there's talks of maybe changes to the County League fixtures the weekend. We just have to wait and see. And as we keep you here, because we've got plenty more to talk about, we've Michael Lester, of course, previewing Kerry, Donegal, and of course chatting our ladies as well. So sit tight. We've news at 7 coming up, but plenty more coming up on tonight's Terrace Talk. Now you're welcome back to Terrace Talk. It's Ivan Hurley with you until 8 o'clock this evening. Still plenty to go through. Of course, Kerry Donegal preview for next weekend as well. But we're going to move to ladies football for a while, and time to look back on Kerry's defeat on the road at the hands of Armagh. 113 to 2-8, the final score in the Little Ladies National Football League Division 1. Of course, the penultimate game for Kerry in the competition. They take on Kildare next week, knowing they'll need to win to secure their Division 1 status for next year. Liam Brosnan was at that game for Radio Kerry on Saturday, all the way up in Armagh. I would like to be joined by a new voice on Terrace Talk this evening as well, Sarah Hoolan, of course, former Kerry ladies footballer, on the line. Sarah, you're very welcome. Delighted to have you on Terrace Talk chatting all things ladies football. I suppose as a league campaign to date, it's been fairly mixed, and there'll be a big game from Mark Burke next weekend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I suppose Kerry have had a bit of an up and down league, and they'll definitely be going into the game next week against Kildare, knowing that they need nothing but a win, I suppose, to stay in Division 1. If you look at the table, like, it is quite close down there, Dublin, Kildare and Kerry, so it's all to play for really, and I suppose nobody wants to be going into a final game depending on other results, so Kerry just have to, I suppose, put the heads down this week and, get their game right for next week against Kildare, and hopefully, things come together for them.
Yeah, no, 100%. They left it kind of late, Kerry, but a real good fight back, and probably a good positive for Mark Burton's management team is that they never gave up, in fairness, and a really good fight towards the latter stage of the game to only be beaten by 2 in the end for a game they looked like out of the running for a good while.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at it that Armagh were going into this game. I suppose they needed to get a win on the cards for themselves, and they kind of came out of the blocks quick. They went 1-6 to 1-2 up, and I suppose at the break, Kerry just had a sin bin right on the stroke of half time. So in the second half, they needed to come out and get the scoreboard ticking over fairly quickly. But it was Armagh, actually. I think they got 5 on the bounce. So I suppose Kerry had a bit of catch up to be doing, but to be fair to them, they kept plugging away. They didn't drop the heads. I think at one stage they were 9 points down, so they kept going and chipping on the points, and I think Armagh just played good game management towards the end. They knew they had to hold possession, and they did, just to hold it out by 2 points, because nowadays with the fact that 2 point rule is in the ladies' game, and Kerry have kickers that are able to kick it, 2 points really isn't anything. So, they can take a lot of positives from the game, but they just need to, I suppose, put the heads down this week and get things a little bit right for Kildare, which I'm sure they will, and I'm sure that they'll come out on top next week.
Yeah, just thinking back to your kind of time playing there as well, you're kind of looking at it as, performances at this stage of the season kind of maybe more important than the results. Obviously, Kerry will want to stay in Division 1, of course, of the league, but at this stage, is it kind of getting your performances right and maybe gelling? There's obviously a lot of new players in there as well, but from your experience kind of at this stage of the league, is it kind of getting the performances right for the championship?
Yeah, definitely. Look, everyone knows championship is the big thing and the main thing. I suppose for Kerry, they've had a lot of new players. They've also lost players, Caught Lynch, they've lost her to an injury for the season, and experienced players like Caught, I suppose Kerry have had to tweak a little bit in the back line and just try and find the right person that sits into the right position that strengthens that team. So I think eyes are for the championship, but Kerry will be looking now next week just to go out and secure status in Division 1. That's where you want to be, and I think once they wrap up the league, then then really they move through the gears for championship and to get training ready and all that.
Yeah, Liam, you were up there covering the game on Saturday, of course, for with the commentary team and everything else. That comeback is a positive to look at, really, because it was kind of, as Sarah said there, was 9 points down at one point, to bring it back to 2, and obviously we see the 2 point scores and everything now in ladies football, a kick of a ball really between the sides at the very end. So from a game that looked kind of well beyond Kerry to get it back that close, that'll have to be a positive ahead of next weekend's game against Kildare.
Without a doubt, Ivan. And it was a kind of a funny enough game, even in the first half. Even though teams went in 1-6 to 1-2 at half time, it felt as if Armagh were probably 10 or 12 points ahead of us, that kind of way. So Kerry kept hanging in there, and even in the first half, there was a double save on the 8th minute from Danielle and Shifra as well. So Kerry had chances, and I think that's probably sums up Kerry's last 3 league matches. No, we're not putting the scores on the board, and I think that's important, because I think the last 3 games, Ivan, up to half time, we'd no score kicked against Cork, we'd 1-4 kicked against Galway, and 1-2 against Armagh. We want to be clocking up, because we are getting the chances, but we're not hitting the back of the net or putting it over the bar, and it puts us under pressure. And I agree with Sarah. Then at half time, when I was talking to Joe, I was saying Kerry need to come out and they need to start well, but the opposite happened, because within 3 minutes Armagh had 3 points over the bar, and within 6 minutes it was 1-10 to 1-2. So the game was kind of it was getting out of reach completely. But to be fair, Kerry kept battling, they kept going, and Armagh, the way Armagh play, I'd be if I was a betting man, I wouldn't put too much against them for an All-Ireland, because they are lively. They have the Mackin girls are back on board as well. Amy's back from a cruciate. They have Laura McConville, centre back there, a very lively player. Every time they got the ball, they were just attacking at pace, and they caused Kerry a lot of trouble. So look, it's a big game next weekend for them against Kildare. I think they're on paper, and you'd expect Kerry to have enough to get over the line. It's a big week for training this week. Just get a bit of confidence going, because after losing 3 games like that, I suppose confidence and morale might be a bit low. But so this week is important for the management team, the girls themselves, and get up to Kildare on Sunday. And if you get a win Sunday, the rest of the league is forgotten about. Everything then it's a blank canvas then from the championship on. But I think it's important to hold our status in Division 1.
Yeah. I was listening to Mark Burke with the game on here, obviously, on Saturday, and I was listening to John's interview with Mark Burke after the game, and he said how Kerry needs to go back to basics, Liam, and he said this, he kind of told them not to be using their bad foot and maybe punch it over the bar a small bit more. This kind of a team off the back of an All-Ireland in 24. A lot of the players are still there. Obviously, a lot of new players in as well. It was kind of saying, kind of going back to the basics was kind of a strange one, because we kind of demand more than basic nearly in Kerry at this stage when it comes to football as well. Now, in a way, he might have a point in that maybe we're not taking the chances that we create a lot of chances and not taking them. Do we kind of have to go back to that level of kind of saying, secure the score no matter what when we're up there, sort of a thing? Well,
I think you could see his frustration a small bit in that we are getting chances, and maybe instead of trying to hit the back of the net, kick the ball over the bar, get the scoreboard ticking over. And we had chance, because even that double save that came from Danielle, then Shifra had a shot at it, and it was saved, and then it broke again, and we could have tapped that over the bar. And the third, I think we had 2 more chances after that could have been, but we didn't. Maybe small things like that where he's aiming at. Just we need to get that scoreboard ticking over, because it builds a bit of confidence, it builds momentum, and there's nothing worse when you miss a chance and next thing the opposition go down and they score. It kind of demoralises you a small bit. But Kerry they are creating the chances, only they're not putting them away. And I think if they can do that the weekend, I think they'll make life a lot easier for themselves.
Yeah. Sarah, we often kind of talk here about the importance of Shifra O'Shea to this team, and we probably saw it again on Saturday. 2-2 score, I think 2-1 from play. She's a real talisman up there in the full forward line, and really important we kind of mind her and keep her fit for the full length of this championship if Kerry are to be successful. Yeah,
absolutely. Look, Shifra, I think every week she goes out, she backs up every performance, and like that kicking 2-2 again now on Saturday for Kerry. I think she just needs a few more of the forwards to kind of, give her more options, more scoring threats, I suppose. Going down the line, if you're playing other teams and, Shifra's the one clocking up the scores, they are going to target the main player, and that's where Kerry then need, the rest of their 5 forwards to start chipping in that little bit more. Just a bit of mix it up a little bit and more options, and make it harder for the teams. There's nothing worse than having going in against someone and they have 2 or 3 scoring threats up front. You have to be on your game then. Whereas I suppose if you take Shifra out at the minute, Kerry scores are very minimal outside of Shifra. So that's just something I suppose they will be working on in training, and I'm sure they're very aware of that too. So look, I suppose it's the league, it's early stages, but yeah, there's plenty to work on, but I think it's not all negative. There's a lot of positives there. So yeah, I just think big week for Kerry, and hopefully come Sunday now they'll get a result, and it'll just park it up for the league, and then focus then goes on Munster Championship.
Yeah, and then focusing on that Munster Championship, Shiva, I know a small bit away, but for this there is that you're looking at Cork, they're 5 wins and a draw, they're leading the way on 16 points. Waterford right up there as well. It just goes to show that probably Kerry's two biggest rivals in Munster have a kind of a good start to the year as well. So, would you be kind of looking at that as a former player? Would you be kind of looking at their league form going into a Munster Championship, saying we've got a lot of work to do?
Yeah, I suppose you can look at like Cork and Galway are leading the way in the National League. They're nearly doing what Kerry have done, and Meath, they've come up from Division 2 into Division 1, and they're, in the league final this year. So, they're laying down markers early. I suppose Cork have, for the past 2 years, they've, I suppose, had to rebuild and come again, and that's what they're doing now. But I think going into Munster Championship, when it will be, Waterford are going well and Cork, that will be just a benefit for Kerry. Like, you're going in, you're going to be playing the top teams, you're getting good quality games before you're going into, the championship games. So, it'll make Munster very interesting, very competitive, and I think that's what Kerry will want. Nobody really wants to go into walkover games or games that you're not going to get good challenges out of. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be a good, I think, tough Munster Championship.
Yeah. On the club scene, Sarah, the Donald Curtin Cup, of course, back. The first round played over the weekend, and of course, looking forward to more games. I suppose we look at the men's county league here, and it's kind of a very similar process. It must be great to have the games back for yourselves and kind of watching and tuning into them. Some good contests played out over the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose the training, when you're training where you're there, winter training, it's nice to get going now with a few games. I suppose you'll still be looking at a few main teams like Southern Gales played Clonmackin, and there was only 1 point in that game. And then I suppose Scarta Glen, Nagale, they're all, leading the way, they're top teams. So yeah, I think it's going to be very competitive in Division 1, which is good. Like you've MKL and Crokes, I think there was only a point in that game as well. So it's good. It's good that the games are back, and I'm sure girls are delighted too with it.
Yeah, and really competitive games, Joe. We've spent the first hour there talking about the men's national league, even at inter-county level, and similar to the ladies, kind of you're in a division where the teams around you are kind of, some way around the same level as you. Maybe you might be a touch behind or maybe a touch ahead of other teams. So always good competitive games in the Donald Curtin Cup. And look at the results from the weekend, even the likes of Division 2. You're looking at Glenfresca Abbey Dorney. There was 54 points scored between the two sides. Really competitive action. So maybe if you're at a loose end, maybe have a weekend, why not get down and support maybe the ladies team in your club in these Donald Curtin games?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's great talent in the club games, be it Division 1, Division 2, so yeah, it's definitely, I think women's football has come on so much, and I think anyone out there, you'll actually learn a lot from watching the women's games. So yeah, definitely you'd be encouraging people to get out and support their clubs, and even get out and watch all the games that are on around. Definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Sarah, brilliant catching up with you, and thanks very much for jumping on. We might chat to you maybe next Monday after the big game against Kildare, and hopefully this time next week Kerry will have retained their Division 1 status, and we'll be looking forward to a Munster Championship. But Sarah, thanks very much for joining us this evening. No problem, thank you. That's Sarah Hurley there, of course, former ladies footballer, and of course our own Liam Brosnan, who was at the game as well. Lads, we have to go to a quick break. We'll be back with a look ahead to that league final, of course, next Sunday. And of course we must touch on the legend of broadcasting, as Michael Lester, who unfortunately passed away yesterday. We learned the news before all those games yesterday. Left a small bit of a hole, I think, in all the coverage yesterday. We'll be chatting about him and previewing that league final after we take this quick break on Terrace Talk. Now, so you're welcome back to Terrace Talk. John, I suppose, look, it was a sad news yesterday really came in, and it was kind of a small bit touching that, the man passed away on a Sunday, given his affiliation with the Sunday game and everything else. Michael Lester, he was an icon amongst GA people, and, we're kind of chatting there. He felt like more of a referee in the studio on RTE than anything else, but, he was a face you've missed over the last couple of years since he retired. It's sad news to hear he passed away at 71.
Yeah, terrible news yesterday, and it was a kind of a bit of a gloom, I was fortunate enough to meet Michael. He started in the Sunday game in 1984, the same year as Kerry won the Centenary All-Ireland. He actually interviewed me a few times, but he was that kind of a guy. He was an unassuming guy. He made everybody feel important, and his knowledge of the game was incredible. Saw on something today that he never had a script or never had a paper, like it was in the head. Passionate sportsman, involved in a lot of sports, as we've said, and motorsport, and he was involved in the Olympics. But the Sunday game was his trademark, really, and. The way he did it, yourself from your involvement, it's you have to have the knowledge, the questions you ask or the points you make. That's what makes a programme good. And he did that at ease.
Yeah.
And he's a huge loss. He was an iconic figure in Naughty and in Gaelic games, and all we can say is that we have great memories of him. I met him several times afterwards in my involvement with the Kerry Miners, and even since at games until his sickness there a few years back. But he was a guy that he had a word for everybody, and he will be missed. And all we can say is to his wife Anne Lucan and to the extended family and to the GA family up in Galway, our deepest condolences.
Yeah, no, 100%. Eamon Fitzmartin, you said a lovely thing about him, Liam, yesterday on the programme last night. He said this, after Kerry lost the All-Ireland in, I think he said, was it 19? Michael Lester stuck his head into the door to the manager's room and just said, you're a great team, you'll be back next year. And he said a lot of people, when a team win in All-Ireland, everyone chases the winners. We've seen that, and the losers kind of have to gather themselves. They might do one or two TV interviews and they're gone, and all the kind of palavers with them. But it just goes to show the kind of the man. He wasn't going down to do the interviews. He was walking past the room, and he still took the time to come out. And I think that's how everyone. No one seems to have a bad word about Michael Lester.
No, and I suppose, look, we all grew up with Micheál O'Hare, Micheál O'Hertig, the voices and stuff like that. But I suppose his voice wasn't renowned. But like John said, he was a great referee. When he was on, he was on with the toughest of them, Pat Spillane and Brawley and O'Rourke and these guys. But he was always well able to keep control.
Yeah.
But I only met the man once or twice through the football as well. Little small interviews. I remember one in '98 with the under-21 Ireland. But a gentleman.
Yeah.
You as a young fellow might be nervous, but he made everyone kind of feel important and that kind of way. But I lost to the GA. No, but it's unusual. Now we're starting to lose a lot of these guys in the last couple of years. Figureheads of our kind of when we were growing up looking at them. Yeah,
say and myself, we grew up kind of watching the live matches and the Sunday game, and he was always a face that was on the telly. And I met him myself actually. He emceed the kind of whole year of the Rally of the Lakes where Michael Fassbender was overdoing it. He did the start ramps, he did the prize giving and everything else. So there's a real gentleman, gave everyone his time over the weekend. His passion for motorsport was unbelievable. And you wouldn't see it in these fellas because, again, you kind of mentioned he's so much for the GA, but he had a huge passion. He did the Rally of the Lakes in Clarny, he did the Circle of Ireland and everything else, and he was a good rally driver by retrospect as well. But one sport you probably wouldn't really link up too much, really. But I suppose as John just reiterated, our deep sympathies with his wife Anne and his kids and the extended family, and I suppose the GA family in general, and to people who kind of, a lot of people just admired him and just for years he was just that person on the TV, and the son did it.
He was there, and
he was kind of, you see him, there was going to be a cracking game coming up as well. I
suppose even a generation grew up listening to Michael Lester. And it goes in different eras, but that there's an identity with a certain age group with Michael Lester.
Yeah, I think, and it's there and it's so many generations, John, as well, because he finished up maybe was around COVID time. I think he retired maybe a small bit earlier than that. So it was kind of a huge generation of GA supporters, and it hasn't quite been the same even without him, really, to be totally honest. So a big loss and a couple of tough days coming for the funeral in Galway, of course. Back to football, lads, before we finish up. I'm conscious of you here late this evening, but all for good reason when Kerry are doing well. Liam, it's a league final. Jack won't want to lose it. Jim McGuinness won't want to lose it. I think Jack said it wasn't a priority to get to it, but I think when you get to it, it's a priority to win it. So it should be a cracking contest on Sunday. Quick turnaround, which is kind of nice. We're kind of straight back into it, and with that kind of break after as well, gives time to kind of wind things back up for Clare. So I'm sure it'll be hell for leather on Sunday.
It'll be hell for leather, like we said earlier. Both teams are there now. There was a lot of talk leading up to it if they wanted to be there or whatever, but they're there now, and it's a national title. So there'll be nothing given. And I suppose McGuinness will be looking at it as if we want to get one over these before the All-Ireland comes around again. And I think Jack will be looking at it as if we can put another one over these, it'll make Donegal think. So there's two ways looking at it. But when you look, I was above at the Donegal game now this year, and they're a fair outfit. big men. They had what I'm going to keep an eye on now is their press for the kick out, because it was my first time really seeing it above in Donegal, and they did it in the first half. They didn't really do it in the second half. It's like as if they said, we'll stop that now because we're going too well at it. Like they played a kind of they played four actually around the D, and then they played a 3, and then they put their 4 biggest men out across the middle, straight across the middle in a straight line, and they really pushed up the likes of Langan, likes of McFadden, Jason McGee, and these guys. Big units of men, and we struggled to get the ball out until the second half. To be fair, Shane kind of picked up the pace. He got the ball when the ball was going over the bar. Shane nearly had it on the cone, ready to go. And I think that's the one thing you have to do against Donegal or against presses. You've got to get the ball on the tee fast and get it out the field. So there's going to be small little things like that. We're going to be looking at like the Paddy Morgan, Darrow O'Brien, all these kind of. So we're going to have fantastic footballers above in Croke Park on Sunday to be watching.
Mightn't be up to the level we saw the All-Ireland final last year, John, but it's still sort of intriguing that the All-Ireland finalists last year, the top 2 teams in Division 1, there's a little bite to it, and then obviously the whole Ballyshannon thing and getting the one up on Kerry sort of earlier on this year, obviously without Clifford up there. Jack will be hungry to win this, won't he?
Oh, he will. He'll be hungry to win this, and there'll be a bit of bite in it, Ivan, because McGuinness. Question marks about McGuinness last year from his own county with the tactics in the All-Ireland final.
And that's why he was spiky at the start of the league.
Spiky at the start. Yeah. And McGuinness is a top-class man. We've 2 top-class managers going head-to-head the next day. Donegal rested a lot of players against Monaghan yesterday, but they have found players, and I think the spine of their team, McCall and McGonigal, the 2 midfielders, like Liam said, the O'Donnells up front. There's some intriguing battles ahead. But this is a little psychological thing, early in the year. The winner, while it's only a league title, it's still a national title.
In Croke Park.
In Croke Park. But were Donegal to win it, it would be a plus going into the championship. If Jack wins it, it's league and championship victory over them. So a lot at stake there, in spite of it just being the league final.
Yeah, I think that just a league final is nearly gone off the league now, because again it's that sort of one where you're kind of like, okay, stay in Division 1, okay, now we can get to the final, okay, now we're in the final. Kerry don't like losing in Croke Park, Liam Brosnan, and it is a good marker to lay early in the year, and you can kind of say, well, we got one up and there, like maybe saw it a couple of years ago with Mayo and stuff, and Kerry winning that one, and Donegal really need a national title given their strength that we've seen from them, and kind of won All-Ireland in the last however many years is probably not good enough from a team that strong, and they'll feel they might have, I wouldn't say left one behind them last year because Kerry were superb, but they'll be hungry maybe if they can secure a league title. It might take the pressure off a small bit.
Yeah, and I would agree with John, if we'll ask questions, if we come away with a victory the weekend, they'll be going up to Donegal, there'll be questions. No more like Mayo, after Mayo coming down. No, there was a big hype, Mayo coming to town. Next thing, Kerry beat them. The hype died. And I think that's one thing that Jack and the management be looking at, right? If we can get another one over Donegal, it'll put them thinking. That this Kerry team, are we looking at a great Kerry team like the Dublin team? Are they unbeatable? Is Clifford able to take over for the next couple of years? But I think it's going to be very intriguing with the players that'll be there. But I definitely think that both management teams are really going to go at this.
So no cards to the chest after this Sunday.
Like we said, they're going to have their team holiday, or team training holiday the week after. It's a blank canvas again. And it'll be starting all over. And
the winner will be?
The winner, I think, at the way Kerry are playing, I think Kerry will at the way that Shawnee Shea and David and these guys are moving, unless now he's going to leave them at home. I heard that. I don't think that'll happen.
Doubtful.
No, I think this at the way Kerry are playing, and I think they're going to take a lot of beating. Yeah.
John Kennedy?
Yeah, I'd agree with Liam. I think that, this thing about resting guys and that's gone now. From now on, this is the national final next Sunday. And Jack, the history with Jack, when he wins the league, he wins the championship. These are things that are stats that are thrown out there, but that's
even though he'll tell you it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and they'll relish this. They're getting to Croke Park, another outing against the second best team in the country last year in the All Ireland. Now we're the 2 best teams in the country at present.
Still,
it'll be a great game. Kerry to shade it.
Meath Cork.
That'll be a good game as well. But I just fancy Meath to come out of that one.
I go the opposite. I think Cork are on a run. They're after 2 great results, and they beat Meath already. I think they'll share that one.
Yeah, beat Meath in Park Arena, wasn't it? That game was played. That'll be a tight little battle. Of course, you've Down and Wexford as well. Wouldn't it be great to see Wexford win the league title after going, after getting to league final kind of against all sorts of odds? Would it be lovely to get a bit of silverware for them as well?
It would, with Downer an up and coming team. They've been going well the last couple of years, so I think Down will probably just come over the line that one.
Yeah, I think you could be right in that one. And then Carlow Longford's a good competitive Division 4, John. Again, I think Division 4 most important for those teams is get out of there into Division 3. Division 4 final is a bonus. Carlow Longford, again, another hard one to call, but a great year for the Carlow football as well. We kind of didn't mention them earlier on, but a team you wouldn't hear a huge amount of to come out with 5 wins and 2 losses out of Division 4 is a huge achievement. And I'd say when it comes to that final on Saturday, both teams would love a bit of silverware as well.
They would, you see, and the pressure's off Ivan to a certain extent. They're both promoted, so it is a free shot now, and you'd expect Carlow, but Longford, proud tradition of football in Longford as well. Great, a lot of great players in Division 4. There should be higher divisions, and I think this could be another great final.
Yeah, Division 3 I think is the only one I was reading online today about something really on the line, because I think is it the winner of Division 3 is guaranteed the Sam Maguire football.
Yes.
The winner of Division 3, so that's a real one to watch between Down and Wexford. Lads, enjoy the game next Sunday. Get in nice and early to see Cork and Meath. You've gone opposite ways, so it's going to be a draw, I can tell you that as it is. And we'll hopefully be chatting after another league title for Kerry next Monday evening.
Fingers
of course,
crossed.
Fingers crossed, exactly. Hopefully the Kerry Hurlers could also have a league title there in Division 2 final on Saturday against Laois after securing their passage to Division 1, hurling for next year as well. So it'll be hurling from here on out after we take this quick break on Terrace Talk.